Okay, hello everybody. So welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in. What does it mean to be truly alone? To feel trapped in a relationship, in society, in your own mind? Today we're diving into River of Fire, so a short story collection by O Chonghui that explores loneliness, identity, and the quiet struggles of women in post-war Korea. It's haunting, it's powerful, and it's a must read. So let's get into it. So the collection was translated by Bruce and Juchan Fulton, who are of course both prolific translators of Korean novels and short stories. It was published in 2012 and contains stories covering the breadth of O's career, from her first published story, The Toy Shop Woman, from 1968. And then there's also three stories written in the 1970s, another three from the 1980s, and two from the 1990s. It doesn't include one of her most famous stories, Chinatown, which I've reviewed elsewhere. So you can find the review of that already on the channel. And it doesn't include one of her other most famous stories called Wayfarer, which I'll talk about at the end of this review. So O was born in 1947 and is regarded as one of the most important writers of the post-war generation. She received the Isang Literary Award in 1979, the Dongin Literary Award in 1982, and she's received many other accolades and awards as well. In an afterword to this collection, to this River of Fire collection, the Fultons write that in these stories, O became arguably the first Korean writer to carry out Virginia Woolf's dictum that killing off the gentle, egoless, self sacrificing angel in the house is part of a woman writer's job. And that's certainly something that we can see in many of these stories. So now, in 2025, O is generally seen as an elder stateswoman of contemporary Korean fiction. She enjoys widespread critical success and has been very influential on the writers who've grown up reading her work. She might not be as familiar to international readers as some of the other big names that have been translated in recent years. So let me just introduce her work overall. So, like I said, these stories are taken from 4 decades. And so they reflect not only historical, political, and social upheavals happening in Korea, but also changes in her style and her personal life, which we can see in some of the more semi autobiographical stories. I think one thing this collection achieves well is really conveying a sense of the shape of her career and her general perspective or outlook on life. And in terms of theme or recurring ideas, several of the stories focus on dysfunctional relationships or on lonely, isolated women. Another recurring theme running throughout the stories is the relationship the female characters have with their mothers and the burden of childbirth that often seems to result in deep sadness and despair. And we can see many of these themes in the very first story in the collection, The Toy Shop Woman. And actually, one of the other things from the afterword written by the Fultons is the idea that O arrived as a writer. She made her debut as a fully formed writer. She had a distinct voice of her own from her first story, The Toy Shop Woman, which she wrote in 1968. And I think they're right. So The Toy Shop Woman was written when O was just a teenager. She was only 19 years old, and it launched her career when it won the New Writers Award back in 1968. And it's actually quite a remarkable story for a teenager to have written in Korea in 1968. We can already see O's skill at drawing readers in. It begins with a young woman, an adolescent, stealing things from a classroom late at night. Then she visits a toy shop to which she seems to have some kind of emotional attachment, but she seems full of bitterness and resentment. What has made her this way? Where does this bitterness and resentment come from? We learn that her brother has died and that she has some kind of conflict or struggle with her sexuality. The facts of her life are revealed slowly and subtly, often through dreams or reminiscences. And O succeeds in bringing this neglected, bereaving young woman to life as she's caught between these issues of loss and identity. We learn that her lover is the woman who runs the toy shop, and that for a brief time they had a relationship. This relationship filled the young woman with love, but now it's over. And O writes heartbreakingly about this loss. She writes, "For a moment I felt liberated, but I also felt a loneliness that would never end. Soon I would shrink back inside my hard shell like a snail. My heart was drying up. How much longer before it crumbled?" What does this young woman return to? At the time and the place she lives, having a relationship that she actually wants is very difficult. Instead, it seems she will be forced to live this half life that she fears. It's tragic and painful, and really quite an incredible piece of work for a 20-year-old writer to produce. 19-20-year-old O Chonghui. And there are several other standout stories from this collection. So the title story, River of Fire, is about one of the many dysfunctional couples that populate O's stories. And as with most of the stories, it's told from the woman's perspective in the relationship. The couple in River of Fire is relatively poor. The husband works at a local factory, and he seems to have been crushed by the monotony of his work. He's trapped in a tedious cycle. And to relieve his tedium and the existential despair at the nature of his life, he starts leaving the house late at night and doing something. So his wife is curious, as you would understand, to find out where her husband goes late at night. And the answer is probably not what most readers will expect. Again, this is a story showing how people are trapped in relationships and are isolated even when together. And again, it shows O's skill at creating characters and commenting on the nature of relationships, and has a very bleak conclusion that makes the reader reflect on what they have just finished reading. So O is undoubtedly a great writer, and this is a very important collection. However, there are times when some of the stories meander a little, and a couple of them are just so uneventful that reading them is a little bit of a chore. Sometimes these sort of slice of life stories are excellent. So that's why the reason that Chinatown is such a celebrated story is because it just seems to capture that environment and place and time so perfectly. But some of the other stories, they just seem a little empty. A couple of the stories. And then later on, so like I said, the stories span the length of her career. And a couple of the later stories, she starts using this sort of stream of consciousness technique. And again, I just thought it didn't really work for me sometimes. It was just a little unengaging. But nevertheless, O is a fantastic writer overall. And for the most part, these stories are fascinating and engaging, with a couple of truly excellent stories. So, like I said, I'm also going to, while I'm talking about O Chong-hee, I've already reviewed Chinatown elsewhere. It's probably my favorite story of O's. So please check out that review. But one of her other extremely famous stories, which isn't in this collection, is a story called Wayfarer. And this story was written in the early 1980s. Again, it was translated by Bruce and Ju Chan Fulton. O was a very prolific writer of primarily short stories up until the 90s, and after which I think her output slowed down quite a bit. and she must be well into her 70s now, and I don't think she really publishes much anymore. Perhaps she does, but I don't think I'm not aware of it. And so she was celebrated. During her career, she's been celebrated. That she's won lots of the big literary awards in Korea, but she wasn't embraced by the public in terms of sales or bestsellers compared to some of the other some of her other famous contemporaries. At least I don't think she had sort of best selling kind of blockbuster books, but nevertheless she remains a very celebrated writer with a fascinating body of work. And the Fultons, who are her regular translators, write that her fiction is by turns elegant, elusive, deceptive, and unsettling. She has always been interested in family life, but breaks new ground in depicting only the surface routines of family members' interactions, but also the bleak prospects. I should have said not only the surface routines of family members' interactions, but also the bleak prospects of solitude, insanity, death, divorce, and desertion that lurk beneath. And you can certainly see those elements in Wayfarer, which, like I said, it's one of her representative works. And it's been published in English translation at least 4 times. So in 1997, 2005, 2016, and then most recently in 2023 in the Penguin Book of Korean Short Stories. This is the Penguin Book of Korean Short Stories. So it's included in this collection. It's also included in this collection, The Future of Silence. And it was also included in this Chinatown. This actually has 3 O Chonghui stories in it, this volume, and one of them is Wayfarer. And then it was the title collection in another collection of Korean short stories by various different writers called Wayfarer. But like I mentioned, I don't have a copy of that collection. So it's been published in English a lot. And it's a heartbreaking story. It's about a middle-aged woman who is lost and alone and is searching for a connection with the world. So what is the basic concept of the story? So Wayfarer is told from the perspective of a woman called Heija. At first, the story doesn't reveal exactly what situation she's in, but as the story unfolds, we slowly piece together the events leading up to her current predicament. However, the story starts with Heija dreaming, and it's a dream that she's had since childhood of walking along a street, following a wall, in the hope of obtaining some prize, some reward that has been promised to her. And she awakes and feels the return of that helpless sensation of being deserted. She felt like a lost child. So the story is about why Heija has been abandoned. Where are the husband and daughter that she refers to? Have they died? Has there been some kind of accident? Where has Heija been? She implies that she has been away somewhere. Was she in prison? Has she been in hospital? How has she ended up alone in her old family house? And having been abandoned or deserted, but for reasons that are as yet unclear, what does she do now? What can she do? How will the world react to her? And the story sets about answering these questions. The Fultons write in their introduction that in this story, we can see that as recently as the 1980s, Korean women reigned at home as usual, but might face stark despair if suddenly deprived of their life in the domestic sphere. So Heija has been deprived of this life. O's story explores why and what the impact is, and in doing so gives us a painful physical portrait of psychological portrait of Heija. So how does this short story that's been published so many times contribute to modern Korean literature? What's its place in the canon, if you will? and what sets Wayfarer apart from other short stories of the period. So Wayfarer revolves around the theme of self-discovery and personal transformation. The story follows Heija as she embarks on a physical journey and this metaphorical journey that leads her to confront her past and seek some kind of meaning in her present life. And through her encounters with various characters, such as her former employer, her tenant, and her old school friends, and her journey into the city, Heija undergoes a profound transformation. Ultimately, she discovers something about herself. And O masterfully portrays the process of self-discovery in the story, in Wayfarer, through very vivid descriptions and just very careful and introspective character development. And as Heija embarks on her journey, the author O takes readers on this sort of sensory adventure, capturing the sights and sounds and the emotions that Heija feels in each location as she sort of ventures out into the city. And you can almost feel the snowflakes falling and just the bitter coldness of the streets that Heija walks. And through her encounters and challenges, Heija is forced to confront her fears and her insecurities, and ultimately comes to a deeper understanding of herself and what has happened to her. So, how does O write? So, the writing here is very lyrical. There's lots of evocative winter imagery. O weaves together descriptions of the city in this winter landscape with the internal thoughts and emotions of Heija. And this creates a very rich and immersive reading experience. Her attention to detail and ability to capture the nuances of human feeling make this a very compelling and thought-provoking story. And in Wayfarer, what O is doing is she's delving into the concept of identity. She's exploring how personal experiences and the influence of others can shape this. And through Heija's encounters on her journey into the city, O highlights that one's identity is not fixed, but rather a fluid and evolving aspect of oneself. Heija's journey becomes a metaphorical exploration of her own identity as she grapples with her tragic past and seeks to redefine herself in her challenging present moment. And it's a very memorable and impactful short story. It's a profound exploration of the human condition, has this very lyrical writing style, and it's genuinely compelling. And I completely understand why the story has been just published so many times, and why it's considered to be such an important story. And I had a great quote, a little quote. So yeah, O once said that she preferred writing that feels truthful but leaves her ill at ease, head aching and mind swirling with thoughts. And Wayfarer certainly matches that description. It's a captivating and introspective short story that explores themes of self-discovery and personal transformation. Very memorable and very thought-provoking. So what do you think? Have you read River of Fire or Wayfarer or Chinatown or any of O Chonghui's other works? Do you enjoy stories that explore loneliness, relationships, and the struggles of everyday life? And anyway, please leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. If you've enjoyed this review, don't forget to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe for more deep dives into Korean literature, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new review. And if you're interested in more Korean literature, check out my other reviews on contemporary and classic works. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.